Hello, everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. This is Greg from Cisco. We're a few minutes early before we get started, so just sit back, relax, listen to the music, and we'll get started in about another minute or two. Getting in mojo here.
Yeah. I gotta feel the vibe, you know? I wish I could see everybody.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
Or maybe I don't want to see everybody. I don't know. So hey, for anybody that's early, you can check out my little test kitchen here. It's not really little. It's pretty big. It's a beautiful setup. Got lots of stuff here, from, you know, combi ovens to all the stuff you would have at your restaurant, really.
Oh yeah, everyone's got those toys, I'm sure.
Yeah, everybody's got all the toys. We got to have all the toys that you have, so, you know, you can replicate what you're doing there over here, right?
Well, Chef, looks like we're 1 o'clock. Why don't
All right.
let's turn down the music and we'll kick this off. So for everyone listening, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. This is Greg from Cisco Winnipeg, representing Cisco Prairies region. I have with me today special guest Philman George. Don't let the screen name confuse you. It's not George Philman, it's Philman George. I learned that myself, that mistake a couple of days ago. Welcome to our Webinar Wednesday, hosted from Chef Philman, representing Highliner Seafood. We've got a great conversation going on today, a lot to talk to you folks about. Before I turn over the keys to Philman himself and let him take us through his presentation, just a bit of background, a little bit of, so I'll cover some background about Chef, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the subject material, and then I'll turn the keys over. So Philman George is the corporate chef from Highliner Seafood. He's been with them for 7 years. He's worked in a wide variety of establishments. I'll spare you his pedigree, but it's quite long and detailed. He's very passionate about seafood and very passionate about helping you, our listener, and our customers understand how to properly use seafood items, frozen seafood items in particular, and how to bring it to your menu and do it profitably. And along with that, we're gonna cover some other angles around frozen seafood, such as the advancements in technology. We're gonna talk a little bit about how it can help reduce waste and reduce waste, save you some money in the kitchen. We're gonna talk a little bit about carbon footprint, sustainability, some very popular subjects right now. And finally, Chef Philman's going to give us some tips on how to properly use frozen seafood on your menu and how to execute it properly. So great conversation. So Chef, welcome aboard. Before we get into, I turn it over to you, a couple more things for our listeners. First and foremost, this is going to be a very interactive webinar, so we want to encourage our listeners to use the chat function if you want to ask a question or make a comment. If you're not sure where to find it, it should be at the bottom of your screen. Should be a little pop-up bubble that says chat. If it's not there, if you see a little icon that says more with 3 dots on it, try opening up that icon. It might be hidden underneath there. But the chat function itself is how you can type messages or questions. I will moderate for Chef as he's talking today. I'll control the conversation in terms of what kind of questions you throw forward. And I should also mention for our listeners, if you happen to see, you can probably see myself and Chef Philman on the screen. You might see a third screen. Just so you know what's going on there, that is Jay Ashton from Cisco Corporate. He's at a live Compass show. So we're actually being live right now at a food show with one of our large customers. So that's why you're seeing all those bodies walking around the room. So, okay, enough about that. So Chef Philman, welcome aboard. And I'm going to let you take it from here.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Greg, for that lovely intro, and thank you everybody for joining us. You know, we're broadcasting live across Canada and the U.S. So thanks for joining in whatever time zone is your zone. And let's get this started. So I really want this to be interactive, as Greg said. So I'm going to start it off with a question. Open up your chat window, and let's start with a really simple question that'll really set the foundations for this presentation, and that is, what is the opposite of frozen? All right. if everybody can kind of put in their answer, what is the opposite of frozen? All right. What do you think? All right. I see some answers coming in here. All right. A lot of people are saying fresh, right? And some people are saying thawed. Some people are saying dry. This is good. Got some people saying spoiled. Cool. All right. This is awesome. I love it. Yes. So, okay. So anybody that said the opposite of frozen is fresh. This is the perception that's out there, and this is why we're here today. All right. The opposite of frozen is really thawed, right? So let's get into why these perceptions exist in the world of frozen seafood today. All right. So oftentimes you'll hear like the chefs that trained me, and probably the chefs that trained everyone here on this webinar today, they'll say things like the fish that was served in our restaurant today was flown in from wherever, and it arrived this morning. We never purchase frozen fish. Or you'll hear things like, I have a relationship with the local fishers. We make trips to our local fish market every day. When the boats come in, I'm one of the first in line to select my seafood because frozen seafood simply is not fresh, right? So why does this perception exist? Well, folks, we look at our training as chefs and we realize that as chefs, we've been trained to get the freshest ingredients possible, right? I'm just gonna open up my chat window because I lost it here for a second, so just bear with me. Let me just open that back up because I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions, I'm able to answer them live here.
Yes, Chef, so far we're good.
Okay, beautiful. So as chefs, we've been trained to get the freshest ingredients possible. I'm no exception. I was trained the same way. And in fact, my perception of seafood has even deeper roots. I'm from a small Caribbean island called Barbuda. This is the sister island to Antigua. A lot of you might have heard about Barbuda because we got hit with Hurricane Irma, which completely wiped out the island, right? So the beauty of Barbuda, though, is there's only 1,500 people on the island. We're a small fishing village, and that little lagoon that you see there, that's where we get all of our seafood. It's really vital to our survival, all right? My father runs the beach bar in Barbuda, right? It's called Uncle Roddy's, and he's off to the side there, and you see him in the picture there. He's got 3 things on his menu: lobster, chicken, and fish, right? And here's a shot of his lobster. There's my old man. If I look like that when I'm 75, I'm happy, right? So there's the old man with one of his signature dishes. But the thing is, Barbuda, you can't just go to a fish market to get your fish. You've got to know somebody. So we'll call up my uncle. If we get reservations, we'll call my uncle and say, Uncle, can you go get us some fish? My uncle will hop into the boat. He'll set his traps out at night, and he'll tell us to meet us at the dock in the morning, all right? When we get there in the morning, he opens up his catch. We select what we need. I take it down to the ocean, clean it up, gut it, and that is the catch of the day. That is truly fresh fish, right? So I wonder how many, if I can ask one question to everybody out there is, actually I'll save it for a little bit later, but one thing that we noticed in Barbuda is after the hurricane came, right? After the hurricane came, everybody had to evacuate, all right? Everybody had to evacuate the island and be out. My poor father lost everything. Lost the beach bar, lost his house, right? But he's still alive, still happy, right? So I went over to Antigua to go visit him because everybody had to go to Antigua. And I said, Pops, I know what's going to make you happy. So I went to the fish market. This is a picture of the fish market in Antigua. They're a little bit more developed. They've got a bit more structure. That guy that you see there with a sock on his head, he's got a blue cooler beside him. That's my local fisher guy. I support that guy. Every time I'm in Antigua, I go to that person, right? He opens up his cooler and I can select what I need, right? There's the fish. I take it back to where I was staying. I invited my old man over. I said, old man, come on by. We're going to have a fish fry, all right? Our fish fries in the Caribbean are very, we utilize everything, right? That's an old tire rim, and we put our charcoal inside, and we light up a coal fire, and then we put the frying pan on top, and we simply fry the fish, because the fish is so fresh. All you got to do is season it, little salt, pepper, lemon juice, and away you go. And here's somebody, my father, that lost everything, and look how happy he is to be eating, beautiful fresh fish, because that's us Barbudans, we love fresh fish, right? So here's the question, right? Now that we've really discovered what freshness really is, right? That moment in time where it's like it was just caught and cooked that day. How many people, When was the last time you experienced seafood that was cooked within hours after being harvested, right? Was it today? Was it this week? Was it C, this month? Or D, not quite sure?
A lot of
right?
D's.
Seen a lot of D's, not quite sure. This is good. Yeah. Well, I tell you, folks, if you're, and it could have been if you went to the cottage and you caught, fish, whatever it may be, but chances are, if you are far from the ocean, the chances of you actually experiencing truly fresh seafood, it's quite rare, right? But there are ways to do it. We'll learn about that in these next few slides. So,
Chef, I just want to say that it's overwhelmingly D.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah, overwhelming. Lots of people are seeing D. Yeah. So folks, why do we not look to our freezers for freshness, right? Well, if we look at seafood technology or freezer technology, the mass production of deep freezers for residential use only happened in the 1950s and 60s, right? And this is how they marketed it here, right? I went online and found these photos. So that means that our parents were probably some of the first to own freezers, and our grandparents grew up in an era where preserving food was done through curing and salting and other methods, right? So the chefs that train you and I are not familiar with freezing, right? Some of the first people that start taking advantage of the freezers were the fishmongers, because fishmongers, they had no way of preserving their catch, right? They would have to they would have to salt it or smoke it, and that would take a lot of time. So when the freezers came around, they were the first to jump on it, right? Fishmongers like, yeah, all right, I've got all this seafood. If it, say for example, salmon, all right? Fishmongers got salmon that was caught that day, displays it on ice back in the 1950s, and away it goes. If it doesn't sell, the next day they put it back on display. Then the third day, okay, it's starting to get a little bit old. What should we do? Well, we got this freezer. We'll just wrap it up and we'll put it in there.
Whoa,
Are you still with me? I got excited there. But we'll wrap it up and we'll just put it in the freezer, right? Folks, two things have happened there that are really destroying the quality of seafood. Number one is the fish was old to begin with. And number two, the chest freezer and the technology in chest freezers haven't really changed that much from the 1950s to now, right? It's still the same. They go to -18. It takes a long time to freeze things solid. And what happens is this is called traditional freezing. And everybody knows water expands as it freezes, right? And the longer it takes to freeze, the more the water expands, right? Fish naturally has moisture inside. So if it takes a long time for the fish to freeze, the water is expanding, and that affects the cellular structure of the fish. So when you thaw it out, first of all, it was old to begin with, and then it's lost all of its texture. It's all loose. So you can imagine that the chefs that grew up in those coastal communities that tried to experience some of that fresh seafood that was frozen from the fishmonger, their first experiences were horrible. So that's why they tell us not to use frozen seafood, because their first experiences, and all you need to have is one or two bad experiences that you don't want to touch frozen seafood again, right? But fast forward to today, and there's some exciting technology that I'd love to share with you guys, all right? So I'm going to show you a picture right now, and this is what you call a tunnel freezer, all right? This freezer, you can freeze things in minutes, not hours, in minutes. And this, it's like pressing pause on Mother Nature. You basically trapped in all the freshness, all the water molecules haven't had a chance to expand, so the texture, the flavor, the color, everything is preserved, right? However, this is sitting on land and the boats are in the water. And if anybody knows fishing, right? My uncle has to go out every day and come back, but the bigger the boat, the longer they stay out in the ocean, right? They want to fill the boat cargo before they return. So some of these big boats are out on the ocean for days before they return. So imagine if this tunnel freezer was actually available on the boat. Oh, snap! Folks.
Are they on the boat?
They are on the boat. So the definition, this is exciting stuff for me. The definition of flash frozen is an item that was quickly frozen on board the boat or at the processing plant within hours after being caught. Do you know what it takes to put one of these tunnel freezers on the boat? Okay, because you can't just like pull the fish up and then throw it in the freezer. You've got to have staff on board. You're basically, this vessel is now a floating processing plant. The amount of money that these captains invest in this technology because they see the value of being able to preserve the freshness right at the source, okay? Once you do the knowledge, and once chefs do the knowledge to this type of technology, then they can start really advertising that we serve fresh fish. And we're not afraid to tell you that our fish was previously frozen. Take, for example, Chef Louis Jackson from the California Fish Grill. Anybody tuning in on the coast of California, Louis got a bunch of restaurants on the coast and inland as well. And Louis will tell you, his famous quote right here, sometimes frozen is fresher than fresh because it was frozen within hours after harvest. Follow him on Instagram, put in California Fish Grill, you get a lot of inspiration. Also,
Jeff, can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
Can we go back to the boat, please?
The boat, go back to the boat. Okay.
So just to be clear for our listeners, I'm kind of leading you to an answer I want you to talk about is you're not just taking the fish and freezing it whole, you're breaking it down, right? So
that's right.
Just to reconfirm, this is
that's why it's not, it's an impressive investment. You're going to see some pictures later on where we show you some of the processing that happens on the boat. It's a difficult job. You're out there, you know, the boat's moving. Could you imagine trying to fillet a fish when the boat? It's a skilled profession. But yes, everything gets processed on the boat and flash frozen.
Yeah, my point about bringing that up is that sometimes people have this perception that maybe it's going to go through another thaw and reprocess.
It depends on what it's being used for. So, for example, if you wanted to have if you just wanted the fish raw, then this is it, right? Like this is the processing. But if you want to have something further done to it, then what they do is they don't completely thaw it. They'll like partially temper it, do the value adding to it, and then away it goes. So it depends on what's needed, right? Cool. Okay, so another person you might want to follow is Chef Andrew Gruel from Slapfish. His whole motto is, I'm going to slap some fresh in your face, right? It is a beautiful fish shack. It is a fast casual, a whole bunch of different, or the same concept, just a whole bunch of different chains, or sorry, a whole bunch of units with the same concept, and they focus on freshness, okay? And Andrew will tell you, when seafood is properly frozen, it is better than its fresher version. You're basically pressing pause on time when you freeze something properly. Okay, so I think we've established some of those preconceptions and given you some examples of why you should be looking towards frozen seafood. Let's look at it in terms of quality, consistency, and profitability.
Jeff, I'm going to make you pause right now. There's a question from Carl. I don't know if you can see the question or not.
I can't. I lost my chat window, but I'll try to bring it back.
I can read it out loud. So Carl's writing, so is this the industry standard? Question. What specification do we need to identify that sets this apart from other delayed freezing techniques?
I think you have to, it is not the industry standard. So you would, like a quality seafood company will flash freeze their fish and process it on the boat. Okay. Right. There still needs to be some marketing to get that message across, but you as a chef can ask the question, is this fish flash frozen? Is it IQF flash frozen? That's the question you should ask. Okay.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. So quality, consistency, and profitability. The best way for me to go through these 3 points is really to talk about a specific product to kind of relate to these points here. I'm going to look at mussels, specifically PEI, Prince Edward Island mussels. Big up Canada, big up our quality out here. Those mussels are prized all around the world, especially in Japan. They love PEI mussels. As a restaurateur, chef, whatever, mussels, we've all experienced good and bad with mussels. The positive about mussels, they're relatively affordable and they have a high perception of value and they're quick to cook, right? But they need training, right? Your staff needs training. If they don't know how to rotate and properly take care of it, because when you get them in fresh, they're still living, right? They're obviously they're decomposing because they're not in their natural environment anymore. And, you know, you got to keep them in the most pristine condition as possible. And all it takes is somebody to forget.
Oops, we got a delay in the feed. If everyone can listen or hopefully hear me, please be patient. Sometimes this may happen and it'll tend to correct itself. So let's hang tight and see if we come back on live. Hello. Okay, it looks like we lost Philman. So please give us a minute. He probably just needs to re-log in. And he sent me a message. He's rebooting. So just give it a second. He should hopefully be back. Technical difficulties happen once in a while. Hey, you're back.
Oh, what happened? I gotta love technology. Okay, let me see if I can open up that presentation again. Yeah. Just give me a second here.
You did exactly what I was hoping you were going to do. Just stay patient and re-log in. It happens.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. So just bear with me 1 second. I'll bring up that presentation.
We're all good. We didn't lose our audience.
All right, good stuff.
We got some feedback from our listeners. They're loving the content so far.
Woo. Okay, now. All right, let me see if I can.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So once again, oh, here we go. Oh, you got a lot. Did you launch it?
Hold on here.
Stop.
I'll stop and reshare.
Yeah. You're launching the file.
Yeah. Oh, 1 second here.
Is it already open? On your
desktop? I've got it open on my laptop now, and then I'm just going to try to share it again.
So when you hit your share button, it's going to give you, you should see various options on your screen. You're looking for the screen that has the presentation.
Yeah. For some reason, there we go. Let's go. And resume share, baby. Resume the share.
Okay, it's working. It's working.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You see it?
Still see your desktop.
We still see desktop?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 second here.
Good thing I've got his backup, so if this don't work, pull up the file.
Okay.
Our listeners, thank you for hanging in there.
We're going to get it back. I promise you. Okay, it's just opening up the document, so just be patient. It's a long document here.
That's right. It's a big file, if I remember.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carl. I'm getting some great feedback from Carl.
Right on. Okay, let's try this one more time. Fresh look at frozen PowerPoint. Boom. Okay.
All right.
Are we good? Are we good?
Yep, put in presentation.
All right. Boom.
Boom, we're back.
This up. Come on. Here we go.
There we go.
All right.
Yay.
All right, folks. We're back. Woo. Okay.
Calm under pressure.
Here we go. All right, let me click through.
I have a question for you. Actually, there's a good spot there. How come sometimes people say, "Oh, frozen fish or frozen seafood, like it does, the color looks different. The fish doesn't look different."
Yeah, so that's just seafood that wasn't frozen properly, right?
Okay.
Because especially when you're trying to, especially white fish like halibut, haddock, cod, when that fish gets brought on board, they need to drain the blood properly before they flash freeze it. If you don't do that, it turns like a grayish color. So it really comes down to the quality seafood provider and whether they're freezing the fish properly, right?
I guess my other question around is only because I have some experience with IQF or quick freeze processes. Does it make the flesh look more opaque or more white in an IQF tunnel?
No, it shouldn't. If it's done properly, it should literally look the same way that it would look when it was chilled.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Right. Okay, so here we were talking about mussels, right? And when mussels are done right, they're extremely profitable for your business. When they're not done right, all it takes is, oh man, I'm sure we've all experienced this, whether it's been in your own restaurant with one of the chefs that just had a bad day, or going to another restaurant where the mussels go out, right? The server's carrying the mussels out, and it leaves this trail behind, and the funk. Like once that is in the restaurant, it cannot be removed, right? People just remember it, and all of a sudden they don't want to order any more seafood from, even if they had an appetite for seafood, their appetite has been turned off, right? And we love the profitability of mussels. We love the profitability, but if it's not done, executed right, it sucks. And then there's another point about mussels. Certain time in the year, the shells are really big, but the mussel inside is the size of a hazelnut. Right? And you don't know until you cook it and you open it up and you're blaming your chef. You're like, you overcooked the mussels. No, I didn't. They're just small. That's because the mussels were harvested off of peak season. And this is the thing about getting in your mussels chilled. You got to work, man, and you got to peel the beards off them. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So what if I told you there was a way to avoid all that and go from your freezer to your frying pan without any waste at all?
I feel like there's a commercial coming here or something.
Right? Okay. So to understand the beauty of our PEI mussels, I want you to just going to share with you a quick story. PEI mussels are farm raised, but they're raised in the wild. So they literally start off in this little thing they call a spat. S-P-A-T. It's the size of a fingernail. That's the mussel when it's a little baby. Then It gets put into these little socks, and they get put on ropes, and they get put back into the ocean. And this is where they'll live until they're fully grown. And they don't need feed. You don't have to put feed in there. They feed naturally off the minerals that are in the ocean. All right? And this is harvested right off the coast of PEI. You can see how close the coast is to the harvesting grounds. And then they're brought into the facility for further processing. Here is where you see that little machine that's got like the red ribbons on it. That should be every chef's dream machine, because that cleans all the beards off the mussels. How many times have we been, we get 50 pounds of mussels in, we give it to the dishwasher hunches over the sinks and cleans the beard. They never really do a good job, do they? And when somebody gets a beard or a grit, it sucks, right? So that cleans all of the beards off. Then they get portioned. Oh my gosh, they get portioned into 1 pound bags. How many times do we ever portion mussels? No, we just take a handful and put it in because some might not open, right? So we just kind of, you give too much, you give too little, you don't really know. Folks, they're pre-portioned. Oh my gosh, right? And every single mussel is going to open, okay? Then they get put through this, they cook them. So they portion them, they vacuum seal them, and then they cook them. So when they're vacuum sealed, the shell cannot open. They stay closed. And then it's up to you, the chef, when you get your order for mussels, right? You just literally take this package from your freezer, open it up, okay? Pop it in the frying pan, and every single mussel pops back open. And they are plump and juicy all year round because we only harvest the mussel when it's at its peak. This is the beauty of frozen seafood, folks. Not just mussels, okay? Cod, haddock, salmon, okay? All of these things can be harvested all year round, but a good quality frozen seafood company will only harvest the seafood when it's at its peak season. So you'll never get those tiny mussels again if you switch over to a beautiful quality frozen mussel. Oh, and the freshness is guaranteed because that whole process, by the way, of catch to vacuum sealing to cooking to freezing, that all happens within 2 hours. It doesn't get any fresher than that, folks. Okay. Let's move on to another example. Frozen at sea scallops. Oh, the pride of Nova Scotia. I don't know if anybody has ever tasted like a scallop that has just been harvested, right? It is so sweet. It is so sweet. And to be able to provide that sweetness, but preserved so that you have the ability to just take it out of the freezer and thaw it when you need it, that's a huge advantage, right? You'll have a lot of chefs. I grew up with a lot of chefs that swore by, I only order dry scallops. I won't order them frozen, all right? But once you do the knowledge to flash frozen seafood, you'll see there's a lot of advantages. Here's a photo of what it looks like for those people on the boat, because scallops come in a shell. Somebody's got to shuck them. Somebody's got to shuck them on the boat, okay? So this picture isn't sexy, but it's not a sexy job. And you know, so they got to have the beard, because remember, it's a processing plant on the boat. So you got your beard mask or your beard net, and you've got your, you know, your sound barriers on, and you're shucking scallops, and then you're sending them through that tunnel freezer that freezes them to -27 and below. Folks, from the time the harvest gets put into the boat to the time they come out of the tunnel freezer, 2 hours, okay? It might take a little bit more depending on the size of the catch, but folks, we're talking hours, not days, hours to flash freeze these scallops. They are beautiful quality for your restaurant, okay? Any questions so far?
No, nothing so far, Chef.
Okay, beautiful. The next slide I want to get into is another advantage of quality frozen seafood as it pertains to your business for profitability and quality and consistency. Quality frozen seafood gives you, the chef, the ability to order large amounts of fish in specific cuts in large quantities. So say I've got a box of fish loins here. This is a haddock loin, all right? It's frozen solid. It's like the filet mignon of the fillet. It's the thickest part. It's uniform thickness all the way around. The haddock loin. You can get cod loins, whatever loin you want. We got it. A frozen seafood supplier will have it, a quality one. Now the beauty of that is, you try calling your fishmonger and be like, give me 20 pounds of cod loins. They're gonna laugh at you. What do you expect me to do with the rest of the fish, right? But a quality frozen seafood supplier has uses for those other pieces. So if you just want the loin, we got your back. If you want it in 4 ounces, 3 ounces, you want it in 6 ounces, whatever ounce, you can do that with a quality frozen seafood supplier. And here's another benefit. What if you want to lock in pricing? I want pricing secured for an X amount of period of time, right? Because the seafood is preserved, it's not perishing, it's preserved, you can lock in that price, negotiate a price with your seafood supplier. Whereas if you try to do that with your fishmonger is gonna laugh, because they work on supply and demand and fish coming in, fish going out. So with quality frozen seafood, the advantages for you are immense, especially when it comes to selecting your own cuts, your own size, and locking in your price. Huge, huge, huge advantages here. Okay, let's focus on a little bit on sustainability and climate change. I know this is a big topic right now. So let's just talk about, look, we can literally do a webinar just on sustainability. It's such a big topic, okay? These are the partners that you need to look out for, okay? Because it's a partnership. Taking care of the ocean can't be done by just one person. You need partners, okay? As chefs, you need to look towards, when it comes to wild caught seafood, you need to look towards the Marine Stewardship Council, MSC, Marine Stewardship Council, and Ocean Wise are two partners that you want to get familiar with. On the aquaculture side of things, fish farming, you want to look at best aquaculture practices. That's called BAP, B-A-P, and you also want to look at ASC as well, Aquaculture Stewardship Council, for some just for some guidelines and some principles on how to farm fish effectively. If you see these logos as you're making your fish selections, you know that you're doing a good job, because all of these organizations have marine biologists and food scientists, marine biologists and scientists that are there to make sure that we're taking care of our oceans for future generations and we're farming fish properly. Okay, we could go into detail on each of these organizations. If that's something that you guys want to see, let us know. Let us know in the chat window. Hey, I'd love to have a webinar just dedicated squarely on sustainability, because it's a huge topic, and I'm just talking at a high level right now.
Jeff, a couple questions before we move on.
Sure.
Sharing these credentials, very, very interesting to learn that. One person, Bob, wrote, what about RFM? I don't know what that stands for. I'm hoping that means something to you. And if it doesn't, Bob, can you expand on what RFM? Do you know what that acronym stands for? My question for you on these brandings, on these certifications is this now a standard across all seafood suppliers out there?
Yeah. Well, no. You know what? You know who sets the standards? We, the consumer. Okay, we set the standards. If we demand it, everybody has to fall in line. So chefs, if you're demanding that you want seafood that is sustainable, I know your customers are asking for it, but you also got to make sure that happens. Then everybody has to fall in line, because there is a ton of seafood out there that isn't certified and that has a lower price point. Okay? So we've got to do a better job of demanding it from the supply chain, and then the supply chain will give it. Okay? But these are the leaders from what I can see in North America.
We can do this question now, or you can decide to wait to the end. Question from Ron Walter is, what's the best method to thaw a large quantity of frozen fish portions?
Oh, I love that question. And yeah, we can get into that a little bit later on in the webinar. Okay. Yeah, that is a great question, because sometimes people put fish in water. Oh, we know that fish came from water, but you don't want to put it back in there. All right, you definitely want to thaw it the right way. So I'll remind me of that question later on.
Okay. One more thing. Bob came back. RFM, responsibly managed fisheries, -ASMI. Does that mean anything?
ASMI.
Responsibly managed fisheries.
It doesn't. It sounds good. Doesn't ring a bell to me. Sounds good though. Right? But at the end of the day, these are the ones that I've seen as the leaders, right? Okay. So frozen seafood, as it pertains to reducing your carbon footprint, folks, when it comes to climate change, when you talk to the experts, there's two things that you can do in your own personal lives to affect climate change. Number one, change your diet. Number two, change your method of transportation, right? The next slide I'm going to show you is really eye-opening, okay? When we use air freight, okay, take a look. The red line is not a good line, okay? That means that you're doing a lot of pollution when you're using air freight. Look at it, it's at like 435 kilotons of garbage going into the atmosphere. But when we use shipping containers, trucks, right, you can put more things on them and make the journey more efficient, right? It's a lot better for our environment, okay? When fish is not preserved, it has to get to the destination as quick as possible. European sea bass, all these things got to get to you as quick as possible, and that is by air freight. And air freight is number one cause. It's one of the leading causes for climate change, right? We've got to reduce our air travel, right? I'm starting to take the train instead of the plane, okay? When it comes to farming fish, okay? We're just going to touch on this on a high level, right? But folks, aquaculture is the future. There is simply not enough wild fish in the ocean for everybody to have access to wild fish. We're not out there chasing wild chickens. We're not out there chasing wild cows. And we're not trying to hunt wild lamb. It just, we've domesticated these animals, and we are comfortable. Now we're comfortable saying, I want chicken that is antibiotic free, growth hormone free. We are comfortable asking for full transparency out of our land-based proteins. Why can that not be the same for seafood? For some reason, aquaculture and seafood, only the garbage gets highlighted. Somebody's growing tilapia in a toilet. Oh, that's going to make the news, right? But there is a beautiful story to be told about aquaculture. And if we get comfortable and start asking the questions and demanding the transparency, the aquaculture world will get more comfortable and people will start being more receptive to it. If you look at the feed ratio that it takes to grow salmon, shrimp, tilapia, bassa, it is the most efficient animal protein out there. What you give to the feed, what you give to the animals, you get in return almost 1-to-1. It's a beautiful ratio, right? We really got to start opening up the discussion on aquaculture. That could be a whole nother webinar, Greg, all right?
Yeah, this is a very powerful slide.
You got it. Okay, and if you're still not convinced about quality, okay, on seafood, there's this report that was done. It's called A Fresh Look at Frozen, and this was done by EcoTrust. A lot of the information that I got on this webinar was taken from some of the research that was done here, and I'll just read you the blurb of this study that was done. In a challenging global industrial marketplace, community fishermen struggle to compete. To better their odds, some are turning to flash freezing to preserve their catch. However, customers continue to assume that fresh fish is higher quality and in some cases more local, despite the fact that they may have spent days degrading at the seafood counter. So that study, conducted by EcoTrust and the Oregon State of University Innovation Center and Seafood Analytics, compared the taste of quality of fresh versus frozen fish. So folks, if all things were equal, they got 150 applicants, right, to come in and taste black cod and coho salmon, one that was previously frozen, flash frozen, and one that was harvested that day. And these applicants, if everything was equal, cooked the same temperature, cooked in the same oven, could you tell the difference? This is a blind taste test. Want to know the results of this? Across all categories, folks, all of them. Flash frozen, what are you looking at? The taste, the appearance, the smell, the texture, across all categories. Flash frozen fish was rated either more appealing or statistically the same as the fresh counterpart. Okay, and the reason why they did this study, this wasn't a study that was done by Highliner or frozen fish companies, because if we did that study, it would kind of look kind of biased, right? This is EcoTrust, who is literally trying to help communities like local fishermen get access to a broader economic system, right? So they saw that grocery stores were wasting seafood. Oh my Lord, the amount of, you talk to any grocery store manager, they'll tell you that fresh fish counter, where everybody seems to want to get their fish, and the funny thing is some of the fish there is previously frozen anyways, it's just slacked out. But that is what people assume that is fresh. Meanwhile, the seafood there has been sitting there for a long, long time. So if we can get people to look at their freezer, look at the freezer section, right? It'll reduce the amount of waste, because when waste goes into landfill, seafood waste or any type of protein waste gives off methane gas, it's not good for our environment. So the more that we can steer people towards their freezer for freshness, the better. And only us chefs are going to be able to do that effectively, right? Okay, folks, so another thing I love to show the quality of frozen seafood is for competitions, right? The World Chef Qualifiers was just held recently, and it was held just at one of the colleges close by, and they requested to use our frozen our frozen salmon sides, right? We've got full sides of salmon that you can see here, and the chefs did these incredible creations with them. I mean, just beautiful, and they're getting judged by some acclaimed judges and a lot of high pressure, black box competition. And look at these creations. Folks, if quality frozen seafood is good enough for these events, I am 100% sure that it is going to be fine for your establishment. And if there's any other questions about the quality of frozen seafood, just look at this. This is Restaurants Canada, very similar to the NRA show that happens in Chicago. You know, once a year, big trade show. And our scallops were featured in the cooking competitions out there as well. So, folks, if it's good enough for competition, I know for sure it is going to be good for your establishment. We dropped a lot of knowledge, Greg. We got to recap. That was a lot of knowledge that we dropped, man. So let's take it from the top, all right? We learned about Flashfrozen, something that's quickly frozen on board the ship or at the processing plant within hours after being harvested. Keep that under your hat, all right? That's big knowledge right there. We also talked about access to specific cuts and species all year round. Only quality frozen seafood can provide that. Locking in pricing. Frozen seafood can help you do that. Portion control, right? Freezer to plate, helping you to reduce waste and increase profits. Once again, we've got a ton of products that go from freezer to cooking source to plate. Man, that can be a whole nother showcase, all right? Reducing your carbon footprint. We grazed on aquaculture. The future is now. We really need to start promoting this. And the increased shelf life of seafood, right? That has been frozen at sea. Once you thaw it, folks, you're going to experience, I mean, it's only 2 hours old once you thaw it, right? You're going to experience a beautiful increased shelf life. We talked about our sustainability partners, and we talked about consistency and quality because we only harvest at peak season and we flash freeze immediately. And just going back to that thawing question, right? This is a beautiful question because you want it, like, if you're, okay, put this way, we all get into a jam, right? Service is going, you've pulled out a certain amount of seafood to get through the day, and then you got a party of 12 that just walked in and you've got to go back to your freezer, okay? In that event, you just want to be able to vacuum seal the seafood and put it in water, okay? Cold running water, it'll thaw out within 20 minutes or so, okay? That's the quick method of doing it. If you want to be prepared ahead of time, putting it onto a tray and putting it into the fridge is the best way to do it as well. Usually takes, depending on the amount of seafood and the temperature of your fridge, usually takes overnight. Usually good working. After an overnight thaw, you can pretty much work with the seafood. Okay, so that is the recap, and I just want to send the question back out to all of our lovely webinar viewers out there. I really do wish I could see you all, but I can't see your questions, but I know Greg's all over the questions. But if I could ask you one more question, what factors influence your seafood purchasing? Is it A, quality and price? Is it B, customer preference? Is it C, restaurant location? Or is it D, sustainability claims? Or is it E, all of the above? What do you think, folks?
Let's see what we got.
All right, Sylvia Norris, E. Carl is E. Marlena is E. Veronica, well done, E. Carl threw in an A. Paul Smith, E. Oh, Carrie Bruce, E. Ron Walters, E. Folks, I love it. There's a lot of E's. This is great. This is beautiful. This means I've done my job, okay? Because at the end of the day, you know what? Whoever said A, quality and price, that is a very important thing, all right? But your geographic location is also very important because certain locations of the world prefer certain fish, right? So understand that, and also your customer preference is key as well. But your location, if you're far from the ocean, chances are that's gonna influence your seafood decisions, right? Are we gonna fly in fish from the coast when we're all the way inland? Just be careful about that, okay? And sustainability claims are important as well, okay? So at the end of the day, you know, a good restaurant, I'm not saying that a restaurant should only serve frozen fish. We should utilize everything that's available to us. If we are close to a lake, we should look to the lake for our fish. If we're close to the ocean, let's look to the ocean for our catches of the day, okay? But also when we want to expand our menu and get into, you know, more cost-saving methods, we can look to frozen seafood for these things. And if we want to go for sorry, excuse me, if we're looking at there was another point I was going to make about the quality. Sorry, if you're by the ocean, sorry, it is about the menu mix. So if you're looking at wild caught seafood for your menu, that's awesome, but don't forget about farmed. Okay, look around your location, see where there's a fish farm that you can support as well. Okay, these are all things important to the holistic approach for your menu writing. Okay, don't just look at frozen. Don't just look at chilled seafood. Look at the whole thing as it makes sense to your operation. E, all of the above. Big up everybody for putting in E. I love it. I love it. All right. So at this time, I'd like to throw it back to everybody, man. Do we have any question? Yeah, we've got Carl says, yeah, but frozen on a truck should make fish available even in Iowa. That's right. Yes, even if you're in Iowa, you can get quality fresh fish. And now you can be proud and say, we serve fresh fish in Iowa, right?
Question, on a menu declaration, can I say the fish is fresh on the menu?
Of course you can. So did you remember those two examples of the chefs, Slapfish, and California Fish Grill? Those chefs are comfortable saying that they serve fresh fish, but their fish is frozen, because we know the opposite of frozen is not fresh. The opposite of frozen is thawed, right? The opposite of fresh is rotten. The opposite of fresh is not frozen. So you could say, yes, we serve fresh fish, okay? Because that fish was flash frozen at sea, preserved, nature pressed pause for us during that freezing process. And when we thaw it out, that fish is literally 2 hours old, as fresh as it gets.
Awesome. Are we at the end of the slides?
Yeah, this is it.
This is it. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up my own couple little points. I loved your slide at the end with the bullet points, because I'm going, okay. But I do want to reiterate a couple things that really stuck with me, even though I've seen the slides in advance, but hearing it live with you right now, you actually hit a couple things for me that I didn't pick up on. But I kept hearing consistently frozen within, 2 hours, 3 hours at the, I really got that. I heard a lot about, within 2 hours. The value statement of order what you need. I love that. I can totally visualize an operator going, well, wait a minute, I just want the loin. Oh no, you got the other pieces. I can totally see that happening to operators. The stable pricing, for sure. There's definitely some benefits on pricing for a restaurateur. I learned something about the certifications. You helped me understand what those logos meant. The carbon footprint. I love that image of the slide with the airplane. So many. This world's changing, and this growing demographic of millennials and Gen Z are paying attention to how we're taking care of our planet. So I think there's an opportunity personally to even market that message. Why we've chosen to avoid airplanes, because I'm in the middle of North America. I've chosen the frozen program because I want to be more conscious of my environment.
Yeah.
Great points. And your analogy about farming, about how we raise every other animal, but we don't think of seafood that way. And I thought that was a very powerful message.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all that. You're definitely an ambassador of seafood, and obviously representing Highliner frozen seafood. Some great convincing points I picked up on. I'm hoping our listeners picked up something. Dan online said, awesome job, Phil.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Before I have give some closing words about what's coming up for our next webinar, is there any last questions from our listeners?
Oh, I'm seeing a lot of awesomes. Thank you, Marlena. Thank you, Peter. Thanks, Carly. Thank you, Veronica. Oh, anytime, Paul Smith. Anytime, I'll drop that mic. No problem, man.
Sounds like we got some converts, or maybe some people were maybe on the fence about frozen seafood.
This is good. Thank you, Brenda. Appreciate it. Thank you, Andreas. Really appreciate all these comments that are coming in. I'm very passionate about seafood, and I'm very passionate about climate change. Right? Like you can see, my family was affected by climate change. Oh, and I gotta big up my mother. Okay, because if anybody from Barbuda is tuning in and seeing me big up my father, like my mother's a little bit camera shy, but my mother is the backbone of the family. So I just like to big up my mother. She didn't get featured on this presentation. I was exploiting my father, but my mother is amazing as well.
Right, or she'll hit you with for not mentioning her.
Oh yeah, she'll hit me if I don't pick her up.
Okay, listen, let me wrap it up then. One more couple of housekeeping notes for our listeners today. This webinar is being recorded, so for all the people that attended, you will get a link later on with the recording. You can have it for your own files, along with a PDF copy of Chef's slides. So if you feel a need to use it again, it's available at your fingertips. Let me check here. Some people are using our Q&A button. Make sure I'm not missing anything. No, just a lot of positive,
a lot of positive feedback. This is great. Yeah. I really appreciate everybody's comments. I had a lot of fun, and I hope to be invited back to do this again. Love
your energy, man.
Cool.
So my final words, other than thanking Chef Philman today for his preparation of the information, very valuable, once again, very interesting topic, and you delivered it with passion. I just want to mention to our listeners, we have Webinar Wednesdays continue. We have another one coming up on, let me check my calendar. It's November 13th is Wednesday. We're actually going to have a double header. We've never done this before, but we got 2 different topics. So you have your choices, which one you want to attend.
Whoa.
The topic is the president of a company called Menu Matters. Her first name is Maeve. I'm sorry, I don't have her last name in front of me, but Maeve's going to be talking about the future of menus. Really, she's really going to have a very interesting industry conversation about how menus are changing in terms of our new demographics, our new marketplace, internet technology coming into play. The menus we're used to seeing and working with from 20 years ago is, in her mind, is dramatically changing. So if you're very curious about menus, this is something you want to attend. And if we've got some carnivores out there, we're going to be doing a master butcher shop webinar. We're bringing a master butcher. I don't have the name, but we're bringing a master butcher, and he's going to be breaking down a full hog live through a webinar.
Wow.
If you're curious to see what that looks like, folks, please watch out for our links. They'll be coming out next week. I'm told on Monday we'll have the updated links coming. And that's it for everyone. Thank you all again. And Chef, take care. And to our listeners, take care, and hope to see you in a couple of weeks for our next Webinar Wednesday. See you, everyone. Drop the mic, Chef. You earned it.
All right, cool.
Bye.